The Galactic Plea. The 6 moons of Elysium Prime cast their pale blue light across the crystalline dome of the Grand Conclave. Inside, representatives from over 300 sentient species gathered in an atmosphere of mounting desperation. High Arbiter HFY, a towering entity composed of shimmering plasma contained within a semi-transparent exosuit, hovered at the center of the chamber. The usual protocols of the Sirene Alliance, a confederation spanning 17,000 years and 38 galaxies, had been abandoned in the face of extinction. The Harvester fleet has consumed the Andromeda core systems, HFY announced, his voice resonating through neural transmitters directly into the minds of all present. 12 billion sentients, gone. The defensive grid on Proxima Centauri's colonies lasted 8 minutes longer than our models predicted. The adaptation rate exceeds our capacity to develop countermeasures. Holographic displays materialized around the chamber, showing massive obsidian structures that resembled geometric nightmares. Perfect black pyramids and cubes connected by impossible angles, distorting space itself as they moved. These were the Void Harvesters, cosmic predators that had appeared 18 months ago from the depths between galaxies. They consumed everything: matter, energy, and, according to the more esoteric scientists, even the fundamental quantum fabric of reality itself. Shin Khalifa of the Myriad Collective, her crystalline form reflecting fractals of light, rose from her hover platform. High Arbiter, we have deployed our phase shift technology. We have unleashed antimatter cascades. We have even attempted to create localized temporal anomalies. Nothing stops them. They adapt to each approach, becoming immune within hours. Our computational models predict total galactic consumption within 2 standard years, added Elder Thrix, the ancient arthropoid representative of the quantum hive. His mandibles clicked in the specific rhythm that denoted extreme distress. We have run 17 trillion simulations. The probability of survival approaches 0. Silence fell over the chamber, a silence heavy with the weight of civilizations facing their end. Species that had spent millennia evolving beyond primitive emotions found themselves experiencing something they thought long abandoned: fear. From the shadows at the edge of the chamber emerged Ambassador Lyra Tizin, her slender form moving with practiced grace. The last representative of the observational corps, Lyra had spent centuries studying primitive worlds, those species not yet ready for contact with the greater galactic community. "There is one option we have not considered," she said, her voice quiet yet carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. "A species we have been monitoring but have not contacted. They exist in what we classify as a death world: high gravity, extreme temperature variations, intense radiation, atmospheric instability, and geological violence. Their evolution has been shaped by constant survival challenges unlike anything our species have faced for millennia." Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the assembly. Death world species were rare, often violent, and invariably primitive by Alliance standards. "You speak of the humans of Earth," HFY stated. It wasn't a question. "I do," Lyra confirmed. "They are young, barely spacefaring by our definition. Their technology is crude, their society fractured. But they possess qualities I believe may be our salvation." The chamber erupted in protests, Elder Thrix's carapace flushed with the bioluminescent patterns of outrage. "You propose we place our fate in the hands of primitives who still fight among themselves, who have not achieved unified planetary governance, who pollute their own biosphere." Lyra activated her neural projector. Above the assembly appeared images of Earth, its blue oceans, white clouds, and green landmasses. Then came images of humans, fighting brutal wars, creating transcendent art, destroying environments, rescuing endangered species, committing acts of cruelty, and displaying astonishing compassion. "The Harvesters defeat us because they adapt to our patterns," Lyra explained. "Our species collectively evolved toward order, harmony, and logical progression. We are predictable because we have eliminated chaos from our existence. But humans, She gestured to the images floating above. Humans embrace chaos. They thrive in it. They create and destroy with equal passion. They are walking contradictions. The images shifted to show human history, cave paintings giving way to pyramids, horse-drawn carriages to supersonic aircraft, atomic weapons to renewable energy, all in an evolutionary blink of an eye. Their adaptability exceeds anything in our records. Lyra continued. When faced with problems, they don't follow logical progressions. They leap in unexpected directions. They use intuition alongside reason. They have concepts we struggle to translate, thinking outside the box, gut feelings, crazy enough to work. She and Calipha's crystalline structure vibrated with skepticism. What could such creatures possibly contribute against an enemy that has neutralized our quantum computation arrays and phase-dimensional weaponry? The unexpected. Lyra replied simply. The harvesters adapt to patterns. Humans defy patterns. Their entire evolutionary history is a series of improbable survivals. They've developed technologies through means our predictive algorithms would consider irrational. They simultaneously maintain contradictory beliefs. They act against their own self-interest for abstract principles. They are chaotic in ways we abandoned eons ago. High Arbiter Zixfon's plasma form pulsed as he processed this. The computational models give us no other options. 17 trillion simulations using our methodologies show extinction. Perhaps it is time to embrace what we do not understand. He turned to Lyra. Make contact with these humans. Offer them whatever they require. But make haste. The harvesters move ever closer to their world. The massive Alliance diplomatic vessel Eternal Harmony dropped out of phase space into Earth's solar system, positioning itself just beyond lunar orbit. Within minutes, Earth's primitive detection systems registered its presence, and the human military forces scrambled in panic. Nuclear weapons were armed. Fighter jets launched. Political leaders retreated to underground bunkers. Religious groups proclaimed both salvation and damnation. Inside the United Nations Emergency Council chamber in New York, Secretary General Maya Santos maintained remarkable composure as she addressed the assembled world leaders. The room was tense, with military advisors whispering urgently to their respective heads of state. The alien vessel has made no aggressive moves, reported General Wei from the Joint Space Command. It maintains position beyond lunar orbit. Our attempts at communication have received no response, but there's significant energy buildup within the craft. President Okafor of the African Union leaned forward. Are they preparing weapons? Before General Wei could respond, every electronic device in the room, and indeed across the planet, simultaneously activated. Screens displayed the same image. A humanoid figure with silver-blue skin and large, multifaceted eyes. People of Earth, the figure spoke in perfect, unaccented English, the words simultaneously translated into every human language across the globe. I am Ambassador Lyra Tizin of the Cyrene Alliance. We come seeking your help, not your submission or resources. We represent a confederation of species facing extinction from a threat that now approaches your world as well. The transmission continued, showing images of massive black structures consuming entire planets, of advanced civilizations falling, of weapons that manipulated the fabric of reality itself proving useless against the onslaught. Our predictive models gave us no path to survival, Lyra explained, until we considered you, humanity. Your species evolves and thinks differently than ours. You embrace chaos and contradiction in ways we abandoned millennia ago. Your unpredictability may be the one thing the harvesters cannot adapt to. We offer technological exchange, but more importantly, we offer partnership. Help us survive. And in doing so, save yourselves, for the harvesters will reach your world within 5 of your years. The transmission ended, leaving Earth's leaders staring at each other in shock. The silence was broken by Defense Minister Cheng of China. This could be an elaborate deception, a pretext for invasion or colonization. Perhaps, Santos agreed. But the alternative, That this threat is real means we cannot afford to dismiss it. For 3 days, Earth debated. Scientists verified the transmission's authenticity. Military strategists analyzed the footage of the harvesters. Religious leaders sought meaning in ancient texts. Ordinary citizens both feared and hoped. In living rooms and boardrooms, in palaces and slums, one question dominated all others. How could humanity, divided, technologically primitive by comparison, still struggling with its own existential challenges, possibly help beings so advanced that they traveled between galaxies? On the third day, a delegation of 12 humans, scientists, diplomats, military strategists, and philosophers from nations across Earth, boarded a shuttle sent by the Alliance. They carried with them humanity's response. Ambassador Lyra awaited them in a chamber designed to approximate Earth conditions. She had studied human physiology extensively but was still surprised by their diversity. Different heights, skin tones, body structures, all within the same species. Dr. Elena Rivera, a quantum physicist from Mexico, stepped forward as the designated spokesperson. Ambassador Lyra, we have reviewed your request and evidence. While some on our world remain skeptical, we have reached consensus on our response. She took a deep breath, keenly aware of the historical significance of this moment. Humanity accepts your call for aid. We do not fully understand what we can offer beings so advanced, but if our perspective holds value, we freely give it. We ask only for protection for our world while we join your fight, and the knowledge to defend ourselves should we fail. Lyra's multifaceted eyes seemed to shimmer with what might have been tears had her physiology allowed for them. The Alliance accepts your terms. We will begin technological and knowledge transfer immediately. The harvesters continue their advance, and time grows short. As the human delegation departed to communicate Earth's decision, Colonel Marcus Chen of the United States Space Force lingered. Ambassador, he said quietly, your people are clearly more advanced than ours in every measurable way. What exactly do you think we can contribute that you haven't already tried? Lyra regarded him thoughtfully. Colonel, for 50,000 years, the species of the Alliance have pursued harmony, logic, and predictability. We eliminated chaos from our societies, our thinking, our very evolution. The harvesters exploit this predictability. But you humans, she gestured to the viewport where Earth glowed blue in the distance. You embrace chaos. You think in ways that seem irrational to us. You make intuitive leaps. You follow what you call hunches and gut feelings. You develop technologies through trial and error rather than perfect simulation. You are willing to take risks we would calculate as unacceptable. She moved closer, her voice intensifying. In short, Colonel, you are unpredictable, and unpredictability may be the only weapon the harvesters cannot adapt to. Chen considered this, then nodded slowly. Well, if it's unpredictable humans you want, Ambassador, you've certainly come to the right planet. Humanity's response. The Alliance command ship, Celestial Judgment, hung in space above the Proxima Centauri defense line, its crystalline structure gleaming against the backdrop of distant stars. Inside the Strategic Command Center, Admiral Voss of Earth stood before the Alliance War Council, her weathered face illuminated by the holographic battle projections. 6 months had passed since first contact, and humanity had integrated into the Alliance with remarkable speed, driven by necessity rather than diplomatic niceties. With respect, High Commander, Voss said firmly to Zix Von, your approach continues to rely on patterns the harvesters have already adapted to. Overwhelming force, precise formation attacks, predictable escalation sequences. These tactics have failed 17 times. The chamber fell silent. No species had ever addressed the High Commander with such bluntness. The council members, representatives from the oldest, most advanced civilizations in the Alliance, shifted uncomfortably. Zixan's plasma form pulsed. We utilize these approaches because they are optimal. Our computational models. Your models are part of the problem. Voss interrupted, earning gasps from the council. She activated her neural interface, a gift from the Alliance that allowed humans to communicate directly with the advanced species. The holographic display shifted, showing not the precise formations the Alliance preferred, but a chaotic, seemingly random arrangement of ships. The harvesters predict your movements because you always choose the mathematically optimal solution. So we don't choose the optimal solution. We choose the fifth best, the 12th, sometimes the worst. We become unpredictable. Elder Thrix's mandibles clicked rapidly. Deliberately choosing inferior tactics defies logic. Exactly, Voss smiled. Logic is what makes you predictable. The human approach was met with resistance, but desperation drove the Alliance to accept the strategy. In the battle that followed, Alliance ships broke formation, attacked from odd angles, retreated when victory seemed assured, and advanced when retreat seemed logical. Human pilots introduced concepts the Alliance had never considered: feints, diversionary tactics, sacrificial plays, and psychological warfare against an enemy that supposedly had no psychology. The harvesters faltered. For the first time, their adaptation algorithms failed to predict Alliance movements. The battle ended not in victory. The harvesters were too powerful for that, but in a stalemate rather than the expected defeat. For the first time in 18 months, the Alliance had stopped the harvesters' advance. In the aftermath, Dr. Elena Rivera worked alongside Alliance scientists in the central research hub of Celestial Judgment. Her team had been studying harvester debris recovered from the battle. The Alliance scientists approached the task methodically, scanning the materials with increasingly sophisticated instruments, cataloging every quantum signature and molecular arrangement. Rivera watched for an hour, then picked up a piece of the obsidian-like material with her bare hand, horrifying the Alliance scientists who had been using remote manipulation fields. "Sometimes you have to feel a thing to understand it," she explained, turning the shard over in her fingers. "Your instruments are reading this as inert matter, but look." She pointed to the window where the stars were visible. The shard in her hand seemed to absorb the light from specific stars, creating tiny shadows that moved independently of her hand movements. "It's not just responsive to energy as you thought. It's responsive to specific stellar frequencies. It's alive, in a sense. Not alive like us, but alive like a virus. It adapts to the energy you use against it." This observation, made not through advanced quantum analysis, but through simple human perception, led to a breakthrough. The harvesters weren't just adapting technologically. They were biological entities that evolved in response to threats. Their weakness wasn't in their technology, but in their evolutionary programming. They adapted to patterns, not to random events. Across the Alliance fleet, human perspectives began influencing strategy. A marine biologist from Kenya recognized parallels between harvester behavior and Earth's apex predators, suggesting ways to trigger territorial responses. A game theorist from Brazil proposed strategies based not on optimal outcomes, but on creating decision paralysis in systems designed to counter logical progression. A historian from Egypt noted similarities between harvester formations and ancient warfare tactics, allowing predictions of their movements based on historical human conflicts rather than computational models. 3 months later, the full Alliance Council convened on the diplomatic vessel Eternal Harmony. Representatives from all member species gathered to hear the humans' proposed strategy for confronting the harvester threat. The chamber hummed with anticipation and skepticism in equal measure. Major Sophia Chen, formerly of the Chinese People's Liberation Army, now commander of the Joint Human Alliance Tactical Division, stood before the assembly. Behind her, a team of human experts, military strategists, scientists, historians, even artists and philosophers, waited to present their unprecedented plan. The harvesters adapt to patterns. Chen began without preamble. They predict actions based on optimal response chains. They evolve defenses against energies used against them. But they have one critical weakness: They cannot adapt to what they cannot predict, and they cannot predict what has no pattern. She nodded to her team, and the holographic display activated, showing not the expected battle plans, but something that resembled a musical score mixed with mathematical formulas and weather patterns. "We propose chaos theory warfare," Chen continued. "Not random attacks, but carefully orchestrated unpredictability. A symphony of contradictions that creates a meta-pattern too complex for the harvesters to adapt to in real time." For the next 3 hours, the humans outlined a strategy that violated every principle of Alliance military doctrine. Ships would move according to mathematical chaos functions rather than tactical efficiency. Weapons would fire based on prime number sequences rather than optimal targeting. Communications would follow encryption patterns based on human artistic compositions rather than algorithmic security. The Council's response was predictably skeptical. Elder Thrix's carapace flushed deep crimson. "This is not warfare. This is madness." "Exactly," Chen replied calmly. "The harvesters have adapted to your sanity. Perhaps it's time to try madness." High Arbiter Zixfon's plasma form pulsed rapidly as he processed the human proposal. After long moments of consideration, he spoke. "For 17,000 years, the Alliance has pursued the path of logical progression. It has brought us peace, prosperity, and technological wonders beyond imagination. But now, facing extinction, we must acknowledge that our greatest strength has become our greatest vulnerability." The decisive battle took place in the Sagittarius Arm, where the harvesters had established their primary processing node. The Alliance fleet approached not in the precise formations they had used for millennia, but in an array that seemed haphazard to outside observers. Ships moved according to chaos patterns developed by human mathematicians, accelerating and decelerating based on fractal rhythms rather than tactical necessity. The harvesters responded with their usual adaptability, shifting their defenses to counter the initial human approaches. But then the Alliance fleet did something the harvesters couldn't compute. They changed strategies mid-battle, not in response to harvester adaptations, but according to pre-programmed shifts based on Earth music compositions. Attack patterns followed the rhythm of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, then shifted to the improvisational structure of jazz, then to the complex polyrhythms of African drumming. Harvester adaptation algorithms faltered, unable to predict what had no logical progression. For the first time, the obsidian structures showed signs of confusion, their movements becoming erratic as they failed to establish effective countermeasures. The Alliance weapons, directed by human tactical officers, fired not at the harvesters' most vulnerable points as logic would dictate, but at seemingly random locations determined by algorithms based on weather patterns from Earth's most chaotic storm systems. The harvesters, programmed to defend against attacks on critical systems, found their resources spread thin trying to protect against an enemy that didn't behave according to tactical efficiency. In the command center of Celestial Judgment, Dr. Rivera monitored the quantum signatures of the harvester structures. "It's working," she announced, her voice tight with controlled excitement. "Their adaptation rate is dropping. They're committing resources to predict our next moves instead of adapting to our current ones." Major Chen nodded grimly. "Initiate Phase 2. Across the battlefield, Alliance ships began broadcasting energy signatures matching those of planets the harvesters had previously consumed. The emissions weren't weapons. They were bait, designed to trigger the harvester's primary directive to consume. The massive structures began to shift, their formation breaking as individual units moved to intercept the false planetary signatures. "They're taking the bait," Chen reported, dispersing just as predicted. High Commander Zixfon's plasma form pulsed rapidly. "Their collective intelligence is fragmenting. They've never faced an enemy they couldn't predict." "That's the thing about humans," Chen replied, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. "We can't even predict ourselves." As the harvester formation dissolved into individual pursuit patterns, Alliance ships executed Phase 3, a synchronized attack not on the harvesters themselves, but on the space between them. Specialized weapons developed through human alliance collaboration fired not energy or matter, but distortions in spacetime itself, creating artificial singularities that severed the quantum entanglement links between harvester units. Cut off from the collective intelligence, individual harvesters found themselves unable to adapt. The Alliance fleet converged, now switching to conventional weapons that the isolated harvesters couldn't evolve defenses against quickly enough. The battle raged for 13 hours. Alliance casualties were heavy. Nearly 40% of the fleet was destroyed or disabled. But when the quantum dust settled, the harvester processing node had been neutralized. The fractured harvester units retreated, their coordinated adaptation strategy shattered by human unpredictability. 6 weeks later, the Grand Conclave reconvened on Elysium Prime. The chamber, which had been filled with despair during the previous gathering, now hummed with cautious optimism. The harvesters had been driven back from Alliance core systems. Their adaptation rate had slowed considerably. Their once unified advance had fragmented into isolated incursions that could be contained. High Arbiter Zixvan hovered at the center of the chamber, his plasma form glowing with renewed energy. For the first time since the harvesters appeared, we have hope. Not of mere survival, but of victory. And we owe this hope to the most unlikely alliance in our history. He gestured to the human delegation, now expanded to include representatives from every Earth nation. Dr. Rivera, Major Chen, Admiral Voss, and dozens of others stood proudly among the Alliance representatives. The humans have shown us that our greatest strength, our logical, harmonious progression, had become our greatest vulnerability, Zixvan continued. In embracing chaos, in valuing unpredictability, in following intuition alongside calculation, they have given us weapons the harvesters cannot adapt to. Elder Thrix, who had been among the most skeptical of the human approach, stepped forward. His carapace now glowed with the bioluminescent patterns of respect. We have existed for 50,000 years believing that progress meant the elimination of chaos. The humans have taught us that chaos itself can be a form of order, one that fosters innovation, intuition, and adaptability. From her position among the human delegation, Dr. Rivera exchanged glances with Major Chen. Both understood the significance of this moment, not just for Earth, but for galactic civilization. Humanity had proven its worth not through superior technology or military might, but through the very qualities the Alliance had evolved beyond: unpredictability, intuition, and embracing contradictions. The war is not over, Zixvan cautioned. The harvesters remain a threat, but now we fight them not just with our technology, but with new perspectives. We fight them not as separate species, but as a true alliance, combining the advanced technology of established galactic civilizations with the unpredictable creativity of humanity. Ambassador Lyra Tizin, who had first proposed contacting Earth, approached the human delegation. When I suggested bringing humans into our alliance, I believed you might help us survive. I never imagined you would fundamentally change how we see the universe. Admiral Voss smiled. That's the thing about humans, Ambassador. We rarely do what's expected of us. And that, Lyra replied, may be the greatest gift you could have given us. As the Grand Conclave concluded, the representatives of 300 sentient species rose in a gesture of respect to the humans among them. Species that had traveled between galaxies for millennia acknowledged the value of a young, chaotic race from a death world on the galactic fringe. The Alliance had sought help in their darkest hour, and humanity had delivered not just assistance, but transformation. Outside the crystalline dome of the conclave, the 6 moons of Elysium Prime cast their pale blue light across the assembled Alliance fleet. Among the sleek, advanced vessels of the established species, Earth ships now flew, smaller, less sophisticated, but crewed by beings whose unpredictability had changed the course of galactic history. The harvesters still lurked in the void between galaxies, adapting, evolving, preparing for their next invasion. But the Alliance was adapting too, learning from humanity to embrace chaos alongside order, intuition alongside calculation, bravery alongside caution. And in this new synthesis of approaches, the civilizations of the galaxy found not just hope for survival, but the promise of evolution beyond anything they had imagined possible. Humanity had been called upon in a moment of desperation, and their response had not just saved the Alliance, it had transformed it.